The first gunshot split the Texas dawn like a crack of thunder, and Tabitha Vance woke with a gasp. For one heartbeat, she thought she was still in Boston, tangled in some nervous dream about the journey west. But then a second shot rang out, sharp and real, and the stagecoach jerked violently, throwing her against the opposite seat. Her heart slammed against her ribs like a trapped bird desperate to escape. Texas, 1873, and she had not even reached the ranch yet. "Stay inside, miss," the driver shouted from above, his voice tight with fear. "Could be bandits." Tabitha clutched her carpet bag to her chest and tried to steady her breathing. Only yesterday she had stood on a Boston platform, surrounded by brick buildings and familiar gray skies. Now she was in the middle of open land that seemed to stretch forever, but possibly about to be robbed before she even stepped foot at her new post. The irony did not escape her. She had come west to civilize the uncivilized. Instead, the West was greeting her with gunfire. A third shot echoed, followed by the sound of hooves pounding away. After long, tense minutes, the driver finally called down that the danger had passed. The stagecoach rolled forward again, but Tabitha could not shake the uneasy feeling that the morning had been a warning. When Sellers Montgomery, a wealthy cattle baron from Texas, had come to Boston seeking a governess for his orphaned niece and nephew, Tabitha had seen it as her escape. Boston had grown heavy with memories she no longer wished to carry. She wanted wide skies, fresh beginnings, something wild enough to drown out the past. But Montgomery had not been entirely honest. "It's not just the children who need taming, Miss Vance," he had told her before she boarded the train. "My foreman, Russell Blackburn, is the best cattle hand in Texas. He is also the meanest man I've ever known. He terrifies the men. He scares off every decent woman within 50 miles. If the children are ever to be civilized, he must be as well." Tabitha had stared at him in disbelief. "And you expect me to tame this man?" Montgomery had only smiled. "You managed a classroom full of unruly Boston boys. If anyone can bring Blackburn to heel, it's you." Now, bouncing along dusty Texas roads, Tabitha wondered if she had been foolish. She was a schoolteacher, not a miracle worker. What did she know about taming wild cowboys? By midday, the stagecoach rolled into Cottonwood Creek, a town made of dust, wood, and stubborn hope. And the buildings leaned as if tired of standing. The air was thick with heat and the scent of horses. A young man with freckles and a wide-brimmed hat approached the coach as she stepped down. "Miss Vance?" "Yes." "I'm Charlie. Mr. Montgomery sent me to fetch you. It's another 2 hours to the ranch." She climbed into his wagon, exhaustion pulling at her limbs. As they traveled, Charlie spoke easily, pointing out landmarks and sharing bits of local gossip. "And then there's Blackburn," he added casually. Tabitha stiffened. "What about Mr. Blackburn?" Charlie's cheerful face darkened. "Mean as a rattlesnake with a toothache. Half the men quit because of him. The other half are too scared to." She swallowed. "There was a governess before me?" "4 in the past year," Charlie said brightly. You're the 5th." Tabitha looked out at the endless Texas landscape and forced herself not to turn back. The Montgomery Ranch rose from the plains like an island of order in a sea of wilderness. The house was large and elegant, with tall windows and a wide porch. Corrals and bunkhouses surrounded it. Horses moved in restless circles. Men shouted across open ground. 2 children raced around the barn corner, wild and sun-browned. The boy was barefoot, his shirt untucked. The girl's braids were coming loose, her once fine dress stained at the hem. "There another one," the boy declared when he saw her. "From Boston," the girl added, narrowing her eyes. "Boston ladies don't last long here," the boy said wisely. Tabitha stepped down without help. "I'm not just any Boston lady," she said firmly. "I'm Miss Vance. Well, and I don't cry easily." A commotion erupted at the corral. Angry voices rose. A horse reared, powerful and defiant. A rider stayed mounted, moving with the animal, as if horse and man shared the same breath. "Is that him?" Tabitha asked quietly. "No, ma'am," Charlie said. "That's Miguel. Blackburn's over there." She shifted her gaze. He stood by the fence, broad shoulders squared, arms crossed. Over 6 feet tall, red beard catching the sunlight. Even from a distance, he radiated something fierce and untouchable. As if sensing her stare, he turned. Their eyes met across the yard. Blue. Not soft blue. Not gentle. They were the color of a storm, just before it breaks. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold still. Then he deliberately turned his back on her. Dismissed. Heat rose in her cheeks, part embarrassment, part anger. So, this was Russell Blackburn, the meanest cowboy in Texas. She had come to tame him. Well, Tabitha Vance had not crossed half a country to be ignored. Inside the dining room that evening, she met him properly. Up close, he was even more imposing. Clean shirt, dusty boots, a face carved from hardship. His eyes swept over her once. "Hope you last longer than the last one," he said in a low rumble. "I intend to," she replied coolly. Dinner passed in strained silence. The children were subdued in his presence. When she tried to speak of education, he challenged her at every turn. "Out here, they need to survive," he said. "Education is survival," she answered steadily. For a brief second, something like amusement flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone. Later that night, from her bedroom window, she watched him moving through the yard, issuing orders, checking fences, walking with the easy strength of a man who belonged completely to the land. There was something magnetic about him. Dangerous. Wounded. She had expected a brute. Instead, she sensed a mystery. And for the first time since leaving Boston, Tabitha felt something other than fear. She felt curiosity. She had come to tame the meanest cowboy in Texas. She had no idea that one day he would fall to his knees for her. The first week at Montgomery Ranch passed in a blur of dust, lessons, and quiet battles of will. Tabitha rose before sunrise each morning, determined to prove she would not be the 5th governess to flee in tears. She brought order to the schoolroom with calm firmness. Emma and Billy resisted at first, testing her limits the way wild colts test a new rider. But Tabitha did not shout. She did not threaten. She simply stayed steady. Slowly, the children began to respond. Emma revealed a sharp mind for numbers. Billy read with surprising skill when he was not pretending to be bored. Tabitha discovered that beneath their wildness lay grief that had never been properly tended. Their laughter came easier when she wove learning into games and outdoor exploration. Russell Blackburn watched. He said little at dinner. He ate as if food were fuel and nothing more. But she felt his gaze on her often, studying, measuring, waiting for her to fail. One afternoon, Tabitha led the children to the creek to teach them about local plants. She nearly allowed Billy to grab poison ivy before she stopped him. A deep voice sounded behind her. "Better he learns to see the danger for himself." Russell dismounted in one smooth motion and knelt beside the plant. He pointed without touching. "Leaves of 3. Let it be," he said to Billy. "Shiny means trouble." He spoke patiently, clearly. The children listened with full attention. Tabitha stood watching, surprised. This was not the snarling foreman she had expected. This was a man teaching, guiding, protecting. That evening, she sought out Mrs. Garcia in the kitchen. He watches you, the housekeeper said with a knowing smile. When you read on the porch, when you play with the children. Russell does not waste curiosity on people he does not respect. Tabitha told herself it meant nothing. But when Russell joined her on the porch one night under a sky full of stars, something shifted. They sat in silence at first, and the Texas sky stretched endless above them. Different from Boston, he said quietly. Yes. He began to speak of his past in pieces, losing his parents young, the war, drifting, fighting, surviving. He did not speak for sympathy. He spoke like a man laying down facts. When he told her he had promised the children's father to protect them, his voice roughened. They were broken when they came here, he admitted. I couldn't let them stay that way. Tabitha felt something inside her soften. The meanest cowboy in Texas had spent years quietly healing 2 grieving children. She saw him differently after that night, and he began to see her differently too. The change became clear when he returned one dawn, bruised and bloodied. Tabitha rushed to him without thinking of propriety. You're hurt. It's nothing, he muttered. It was not nothing. In the quiet sitting room, she cleaned his wounds. His ribs were badly bruised, his lips split, his jaw swollen. He explained about rustlers and a man named Jasper Hollis, who believed Montgomery had cheated him of land and water. I tried talking first, Russell said. Guns would have started a range war. You risked your life, she whispered. He shrugged. Someone had to. As she wrapped his ribs, their hands brushed. The air between them thickened. Why do you care? He asked suddenly. Because you're a good man, she almost said. Instead, she answered softly, because you're trying to do what's right. From that day, the distance between them shrank. But trouble was building. Montgomery returned early from a trip, anger simmering beneath his polished manners. Yet he announced that Emma and Billy would be sent to boarding school in San Antonio within a month. The children were devastated. Russell was furious. They need stability, he told Tabitha that night, not to be shipped off to some city to polish their accents. Tabitha agreed. That was when Russell revealed the truth. The children's father had named him their legal guardian in his will. Montgomery was only an alternative. But the document was in Montgomery's possession. If I can prove it, Russell said, I can fight him. Tabitha did not hesitate. I'll go to San Antonio. The journey was long and hot. Charlie accompanied her. At the law office, the attorney confirmed it. Russell was the rightful guardian. Tabitha returned to the ranch with proof tucked safely in her reticule. Montgomery suspected something, and his eyes were sharp, calculating. But he could not stop what came next. Russell rode into town to meet with Judge Wilson. The confrontation in Montgomery's study was fierce. Montgomery accused Russell of being unfit, rough, violent, uneducated. Tabitha stood. He loves those children, she said firmly. They are thriving here. They are safe here. The judge ruled in Russell's favor. Guardianship would be his. Montgomery's control was broken. When they stepped out into the hallway afterward, Russell pulled Tabitha gently aside. You were magnificent in there, he said. I spoke the truth. His blue eyes softened in a way she had never seen. You believe in me, he murmured, even after seeing my worst. I see all of you, she replied quietly. And then, for the first time, he kissed her. Not fierce. Not demanding, but careful, like a man who understood the weight of what he was claiming. In that moment, the meanest cowboy in Texas was not a storm. He was a man falling. Wait, before we move on, what do you think about the story so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I'm really curious to know. The ranch changed after that day. It was not loud. It was not sudden. but something steady and powerful shifted in the air at Montgomery Ranch. Judge Wilson signed the final papers within the week. Russell Blackburn became Emma and Billy's legal guardian. Montgomery kept his pride, but he lost his control. He tried to maintain dignity, speaking little and traveling often. The house felt lighter in his absence. The children laughed freely again. Even the ranch hands seemed to stand taller. But the biggest change was Russell. But he did not soften in front of the men. He still gave orders in that deep voice that carried across the fields. He still moved with quiet strength and command. But with the children, and with Tabitha, the walls he had built for years began to fall. One evening, after the court ruling, Russell led Tabitha out to the edge of the property where the hills rolled soft and golden under the setting sun. "I bought land," he said quietly. She looked at him in surprise. "The Kendall place, 500 acres, good water, solid house, needs work, but it's ours." "Ours?" she whispered. "If you'll have it that way." Her breath caught. He stood before her, the wide Texas sky behind him, the wind tugging at his dark hair. For the first time since she had met him, he did not look like the meanest cowboy in Texas. He looked uncertain. "I never thought I'd ask this," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Never thought I'd want more than work and keeping my word." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "It was my mother's," he said, as he opened it. Inside lay a simple gold ring with a single pearl. "I don't have fancy words," he admitted, "but I know this. I don't want to raise those children without you. I don't want to build that house without you, and I don't want to wake up under this sky without you beside me." Tabitha's vision blurred with tears. "Tabitha Vance," he said, steady now, strong in the way that mattered. "Will you be my wife?" For a heartbeat, she remembered Boston. Polite dinners, quiet streets, the life she once thought she wanted. Then she looked at Russell, and at the man who had fought for children that were not his own, the man who chose talk over guns, the man who had learned to be strong without being cruel. "Yes," she whispered, then stronger. "Yes, Russell." He slipped the ring onto her finger as if it had always belonged there. When he kissed her this time, there was no hesitation, no holding back. It was the kiss of a man who had made a choice and would never regret it. The wedding took place in October. The new house stood proud on its rise, freshly painted white, with a wide porch that looked over the creek. The ranch hands helped repair every board. Mrs. Garcia sewed curtains by hand. Charlie hung lanterns in the oak trees. Emma stood beside Tabitha as maid of honor, her braids neat and shining. Billy stood tall next to Russell, determined to look serious, but failing when excitement overtook him. Judge Wilson spoke the vows. Russell repeated them clearly, his voice steady and sure. "I, Russell James Blackburn, take you, Tabitha Vance." His eyes never left hers. When Tabitha said her vows, she felt no doubt, no fear, only rightness. Afterward, there was food, music, and dancing beneath the wide Texas sky. Even Montgomery attended, bringing gifts and quiet acceptance. The feud was over. The future was no longer his to control. As lanterns glowed in the evening light, Russell pulled Tabitha close. "Happy, Mrs. Blackburn?" he asked softly. "Completely," she answered. Years passed, but the story did not fade. The Blackburn Ranch became known across Texas, not just for fine cattle, not just for strong horses, but for children. Yea, Russell and Tabitha opened their home to orphans and boys who had nowhere to go. Some came rough. Some came silent. Some came angry at the world. Russell understood anger. Tabitha understood loss. Together, they built more than a ranch. They built a refuge. Emma grew into a fierce young woman, with a mind sharper than any blade. Billy grew into a rancher strong and steady, like Russell. And on quiet evenings, when the day's work was done and the children were asleep, Tabitha and Russell would sit on their porch, hands linked, watching the sunset paint the sky in fire and gold. "Did you ever imagine this life?" Russell would ask. "Never," Tabitha would answer honestly, "but I cannot imagine any other." The man who had once been known as the meanest cowboy in Texas now carried a different reputation. Fair, honorable, devoted. But Tabitha knew the deepest truth. He had not been tamed by force. He had not changed because someone tried to civilize him. He had fallen because someone saw him clearly and chose him anyway. And in choosing love over loneliness, in choosing family over pride, Russell Blackburn had done the bravest thing a man could do. He had fallen to his knees, not in defeat, but in devotion, and under the endless Texas sky that made him the strongest man of all.